The room was too quiet for a Saturday morning. Sunlight spilled through half-closed blinds, highlighting dust that floated lazily in the air. On the bed lay Rebecca Harper, her once bright blue eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A belt was looped tightly around her neck, the skin beneath it bruised and raw. Her hands rested stiffly at her sides, one still clutching the corner of the blanket as if she tried to pull it up for comfort. At the doorway, Detective Marlon Briggs stood frozen, the metallic taste of shock on his tongue. He had seen death before, but this felt personal. The crime scene tech crouched near the bed, carefully pulling a wallet from a nightstand. "Detective," the tech said, voice low, "the ID in here isn't hers." Briggs glanced over. The driver's license bore Rebecca's face, but the name was Ashley Marie Harper, Rebecca's younger sister. The same sister who, according to neighbors, had moved in just 6 weeks ago after falling on hard times. And now she was gone. Briggs felt his stomach sink. A family home turned into a crime scene, a sister missing, a woman dead, and a driver's license that hinted at a betrayal no one saw coming. He stepped into the room, careful not to disturb the evidence, and looked down at the lifeless body. The pattern was clear. Rebecca had trusted her sister with a roof, a bed, and food, and it looked like her sister had paid her back in blood. The silence was heavy, pressing in from all sides. Briggs knew the next 48 hours would decide everything. Whether Ashley was a grieving sister in hiding or a cold-blooded killer who had traded blood for a stolen life. Rebecca Harper had always been the kind of person who kept her door open, literally and figuratively, in her small Montgomery neighborhood. Folks knew her for her homemade peach cobbler and her habit of leaving the porch light on for late visitors. She worked at the county library, where she spent her days recommending mystery novels to retirees and helping high school kids with history projects. Life wasn't fancy, but it was steady. She had a modest 2-bedroom home, a rusty blue sedan, and a few close friends who came over for coffee on Sundays. Her only family nearby was her younger sister, Ashley, who lived 2 towns over, or at least she had, until she'd hit a rough patch. Ashley's call had come in early spring. Her voice was trembling, and Rebecca could hear cars honking in the background. "Becca," Ashley had said, "I need help. I'm out on the street. It's bad. I don't have anywhere to go." Rebecca hadn't hesitated. "Come here. You can stay as long as you need." The first few days were almost nostalgic, like they were kids again, staying up late watching TV, sharing stories over bowls of cereal. But it didn't take long for Rebecca to notice little changes. Her favorite gold bracelet vanished from her dresser. An old credit card she rarely used was suddenly missing from her wallet. Ashley brushed off Rebecca's questions with a laugh, saying she'd probably misplaced them. Then came the bills. A department store credit account Rebecca never opened. A cell phone plan in her name, with 3 new iPhones attached. Rebecca called the companies, insisting there had been a mistake. But each time the charges stuck. By midsummer, Rebecca was quietly keeping her purse by her side at all times. She told herself Ashley was just figuring things out and that it wasn't worth fighting over. But the unease in her chest grew heavier with each passing week. The night before her death, Rebecca was seen at the grocery store buying her favorite vanilla creamer and a pack of cinnamon rolls. The cashier, a young man named Danny, later told police she'd seemed a little off, glancing over her shoulder as though someone was watching her. At 9:14 p.m., a neighbor spotted Ashley standing on the porch, smoking a cigarette and staring out into the street. By 9:45, the lights in Rebecca's bedroom went dark. The next morning, Rebecca didn't show up for her Saturday shift at the library. Her friend, concerned, drove over and found the front door unlocked. The house was quiet, too quiet. When she stepped into the bedroom, she screamed. By the time police arrived, Ashley was nowhere to be found. Rebecca's phone was missing, along with her wallet, laptop, and a stack of mail from the kitchen counter. But in its place, the police found a purse on the floor with only one item inside, Ashley's old expired ID. And just like that, the open-door kindness that Rebecca had lived by had been shut forever. The police needed answers, but the only person who might have them was gone. And Detective Marlon Briggs was about to discover that finding her would be far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Detective Marlon Briggs stood on the cracked driveway, squinting against the morning sun. The small Montgomery neighborhood was still waking up. Dog walkers slowing their pace to stare at the flashing lights, blinds shifting as curious neighbors peeked out. The crime scene unit moved in and out of Rebecca Harper's home, each step muffled by the heavy quiet that followed a violent death. Briggs had been with the department for 12 years, but cases like this never got easier, especially when they involved family turning on family. He flipped open his notebook, scanning the preliminary notes. Victim, Rebecca Harper, 35, librarian. Cause of death, apparent strangulation with a belt, likely from her own closet. Last seen alive, approximately 9:30 p.m. the night before. Suspect, Ashley Harper, 29, last known to be living in the victim's home. Officer Gina Lopez approached with a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a driver's license, Rebecca's face paired with Ashley's name. This was in her nightstand, Lopez said. We also found a pile of open mail addressed to Rebecca. All her recent bank statements are gone. Briggs frowned. Identity theft wasn't just an angle here. It was the center of the crime. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Turner, waited on her porch with her arms crossed tight against her chest. Briggs walked over. Ma'am, did you see or hear anything unusual last night? Mrs. Turner nodded quickly. I saw Ashley. She was out there on the porch, just standing like she was waiting for somebody. Didn't even wave. That girl's been trouble since she got here. How so? Briggs asked. She had people coming by all hours. Once, I saw a man I didn't recognize leave here with a bag. Big one. Rebecca was a sweetheart, but she looked worn down lately. You could see it in her face. As the officers canvassed the block, Briggs stepped back into the house. The kitchen counter was bare except for a coffee mug and an open jar of sugar. The couch still had a folded blanket draped neatly over the arm, like Rebecca had been tidying before bed. But her bedroom told another story. The sheets were twisted, the nightstand drawer pulled halfway out, and a faint indentation on the carpet suggested a knee or foot had pressed down hard beside the bed. Forensics was already working, dusting for prints and photographing every detail. But the bigger problem was Ashley's disappearance. She hadn't taken Rebecca's car, so she was likely on foot or had someone pick her up. By noon, dispatch reported that Ashley's bank card had been used at a gas station 20 miles south. The clerk there remembered her clearly. She had bought a prepaid cell phone, a pack of cigarettes, and paid in cash. Briggs knew what that meant. She was trying to vanish. Back at the station, they ran Ashley's name. A string of misdemeanors, petty theft, credit card fraud, bad checks, but no violent charges. Still, Briggs had seen enough to know that desperation could push a petty thief to murder, especially when family was involved. Just as he was wrapping up his initial report, Lopez knocked on his office door. We pulled security footage from the gas station. You want to see this? On the screen, Ashley walked in wearing a baseball cap pulled low over her face. But she wasn't alone. A man in a dark hoodie lingered near the entrance, watching her. After she made her purchase, they left together, getting into a beat-up maroon sedan. The plates were too blurry to read. Briggs leaned back in his chair. So she's not just running, she's got help. Which meant one thing. Tracking her down was about to get a whole lot harder. But he also knew something else. People who steal identities eventually have to use them. And when they did, it always left a trail. Somewhere out there, Ashley Harper was using her sister's name, and it was only a matter of time before she slipped up. Detective Briggs sat in the dimly lit briefing room, the faint hum of the overhead fan filling the silence. A large corkboard displayed everything they had so far. A photo of Rebecca Harper smiling at a library event, the blurry gas station footage of Ashley, a map dotted with pins showing where her stolen identity had already been used. The pins were multiplying. Over the past 48 hours, Rebecca's name had been linked to a spree of small transactions, hotel rooms, clothing stores, and pawn shops. Each one felt like a breadcrumb, but every time Briggs and his team arrived, they were just a little too late. Lopez walked in carrying a manila folder. We've got something, she said, sliding across the table. Inside were stills from a pawn shop security camera in Selma. Ashley stood at the counter, selling a gold bracelet. Briggs stared at the photo. He recognized the bracelet immediately. Rebecca had reported it missing weeks ago. The detail that caught his attention, though, wasn't the bracelet. It was a man standing beside her. Same build, same hoodie. Lopez confirmed it. Pawn shop owner says the guy gave his name as Mike Daniels. Paid cash for the bracelet, didn't even haggle. The owner also mentioned Ashley seemed scared, kept glancing at him before speaking. That didn't fit the picture Briggs had painted in his head. If Ashley was a killer, why would she seem intimidated by her own accomplice? The case was getting muddy. Later that afternoon, they tracked a maroon sedan from the gas station footage to a used car lot 2 counties over. The sale paperwork had been filled out under a false name, but the signature was a match to a parolee named Michael Daniels. Daniels had been out of prison for 8 months after serving time for burglary and aggravated assault. No direct ties to Ashley were found, but he had a record of manipulating younger women into his schemes. Briggs rubbed his temples. So we've got a manipulative ex-con and a sister with a theft record. Could be she killed Rebecca for the identity, or he did, and she's running out of fear. Lopez hesitated. Or they both did it together. The next morning, a lead came in from a motel clerk in Mobile. Rebecca's name had been used to rent a room there 2 nights ago. Briggs and Lopez drove down, hoping to finally catch up. When they arrived, the room was already empty. The bed was unmade, and the faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered in the air. But in the bathroom trash can, they found something, a receipt from a pharmacy just across the street. Briggs and Lopez pulled the store security footage. There she was, Ashley, wearing the same baseball cap from before, clutching a plastic bag. Daniels wasn't with her this time. Briggs froze the frame. Ashley's eyes darted nervously toward the camera. Her face looked thinner, her expression hollow. He didn't know if he was staring at a cold-blooded killer or a woman running for her life. But either way, he knew one thing for certain. This was the closest they'd been to catching her. And the next move had to be perfect. The air in Detective Briggs's unmarked sedan was thick with tension as he and Lopez sat outside the small pharmacy in Mobile, eyes locked on the glass door. They had arrived less than 30 minutes after pulling the motel security footage, hoping Ashley might circle back for something she forgot. But the door never opened. Inside, the pharmacy clerk confirmed Ashley had bought over-the-counter sleeping pills, bandages, and a cheap hair dye kit. She paid in cash, the clerk said. Didn't say much. Looked like she hadn't slept in days. That detail stuck in Briggs's mind. Hair dye meant she was planning to change her look. Sleeping pills meant she either wasn't sleeping or needed to keep someone else that way. They canvassed the area, checking nearby gas stations and diners. At one small diner 2 blocks away, a waitress remembered seeing Ashley early that morning. She wasn't alone, the waitress said. She had this guy with her. Looked rough. Hoodie, beard, kind of mean-looking. They argued the whole time. Daniels, the waitress, overheard a bit of their fight. Something about the plan and getting rid of loose ends. Briggs didn't like the sound of that at all. By the time they returned to the motel, the desk clerk was gone, replaced by an older man who clearly didn't want to talk. It took Lopez's patience and Briggs's quiet pressure to get him to admit something. The man in the hoodie had returned alone about an hour ago. He turned in the room key, paid extra to have a room cleaned fast, and left in a hurry. The cleaner they spoke to next told them the trash in the room's bathroom hadn't been there when she started, which meant Daniels had planted the receipt, or Ashley had. Either way, Briggs realized they were being toyed with. Back at the Mobile PD substation, a fresh report landed on Briggs's desk. Danielle's maroon sedan had been spotted on a rural highway headed west. 2 hours earlier. That meant they had a lead, but a slow one. Briggs ordered road patrol to be on alert, but the next ping came from a completely different direction. A credit card attempt under Rebecca Harper's name at an electronics store in Pensacola. The card was declined, but security cameras showed Ashley alone. This time, her hair was dark brown, almost black. She wore sunglasses indoors, but Briggs could still see the strain on her face. Either she's running from him, Lopez said, or she's running from us. They put out an APB, but hours later, the trail went cold again. Danielle's car vanished. Ashley vanished. Back in Montgomery, Briggs's captain started pressing for answers. It's been 4 days since the murder. You got a suspect with a record, a violent accomplice, and a dead woman. You better tell me you're close. Briggs didn't answer right away. He thought about Rebecca's tidy home, her kindness toward a sister who clearly didn't deserve it. He thought about the gold bracelet, the ID in the nightstand, the gas station footage. He was close, but not close enough. That night, Briggs sat at his kitchen table staring at the caseboard in his head. Something didn't add up. If Ashley had killed her sister for the identity, she would have used it to live large, not hop between dingy motels and pawn shops. And if Daniels was in control, why let her wander alone? The next morning, Lopez burst into his office holding a printed email. "You're not going to believe this," she said. It was a fraud alert sent to Rebecca Harper's email, likely still being monitored by the bank. Someone had just opened a line of credit in her name for a storage unit in Baton Rouge. Briggs's pulse quickened. Storage units weren't for hiding people. They were for hiding things. And sometimes the truth. The Baton Rouge air was thick and sticky when Detective Briggs and Lopez pulled into the gravel lot of Bayou Lockin's store. Rows of metal roll-up doors stretched out like a maze, their faded numbers stenciled in black. The manager, a wiry man in a bald cap, shuffled over holding a clipboard. "Unit 217, he said, tapping the paper. "Rented 2 days ago under the name Rebecca Harper. Paid cash for 3 months up front. Woman signed for it. Dark hair, sunglasses." Ashley. The manager unlocked the unit while Briggs and Lopez stood ready. The door rolled up a metallic screech, revealing a cramped, dim space. At first glance, it looked like junk, duffel bags, an old suitcase, a couple of cardboard boxes stacked high. But when Briggs stepped inside, the air hit him, stale, chemical, and faintly metallic. Lopez opened the first box. Inside were stacks of unopened mail addressed to Rebecca Harper, bank statements, pre-approved credit offers, even her expired passport. Beneath the papers lay a zippered pouch stuffed with cash, at least a few $1,000s. The second box was worse. Inside were half a dozen driver's licenses, all with different names but Ashley's face. Credit cards and multiple aliases. Prepaid cell phones. Identity theft kits. Briggs crouched by the suitcase. When he unzipped it, his jaw tightened. Inside was Rebecca's missing laptop, a small velvet pouch containing her gold bracelet and other jewelry, and a folded belt, the same brand and style as the one used in the murder. It was enough to charge Ashley for theft, fraud, and likely murder. But it still didn't answer the bigger question. Where was she now? And what about Daniels? Lopez was digging through one of the duffel bags when she found something odd, a worn spiral notebook. Flipping it open revealed pages of sloppy handwriting, some in Ashley's style, others in a different hand. The entries were a mix of notes and arguments. One page stopped Briggs cold. She's starting to ask questions. Can't let her ruin this. You do it. I can't. The U was underlined twice. Briggs and Lopez exchanged a look. If Ashley wrote this, it meant Daniels might have been the one to physically kill Rebecca. But it also meant Ashley had known and done nothing to stop it. Before they could process further, the manager jogged back over, looking uneasy. Detectives? You asked me to keep an eye out for that woman. Well, I think she's here." Briggs's pulse spiked. "Where?" "By the office. She's on foot. I saw her talking to some guy in a maroon sedan. Looked like they were arguing." Daniels. Briggs and Lopez moved fast, slipping around the side of the storage building. Sure enough, there she was. Ashley, hair now a blotchy brown from the cheap dye, clutching a purse like it was her lifeline. Daniel stood too close, his jaw tight, one hand gripping her arm. They couldn't hear the words, but they saw Ashley shake her head violently. Danielle's other hand slipped toward his pocket. Briggs drew his weapon. "Police, don't move." Danielle's eyes went wide, and in a split second, he shoved Ashley hard toward Briggs and bolted for the car. Briggs barely caught Ashley before she hit the gravel. She was shaking, eyes darting between him and the fleeing sedan. "You don't understand," she gasped. "I didn't." A gunshot cracked in the distance. Briggs spun toward the sound. Danielle's car swerved wildly at the far end of the lot, then disappeared around the corner. Ashley was breathing hard, tears streaking her face. "He's going to kill me next." The storage lot was chaos. Briggs pressed Ashley against the side of the building, shielding her as the echo of the gunshot faded into the Baton Rouge humidity. Lopez sprinted toward the corner, weapon drawn, but Daniels was already gone. Briggs turned back to Ashley. Her breathing was shallow, her pupils wide. "You're coming with us," he said, gripping her arm, not roughly, but firmly enough to make it clear she had no choice. At the Baton Rouge substation, Ashley sat in a cold interview room, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller than in the grainy surveillance footage, more fragile. But Briggs knew better than to mistake fragility for innocence. "I didn't kill her," Ashley said as soon as he sat down. Her voice cracked on the last word. I made a mistake bringing him there, but I didn't touch her." Briggs leaned back. "You moved in with your sister. You stole her identity. You drained her accounts. And now she's dead. Tell me why I should believe you didn't strangle her." Her hands trembled. "Because I was in the kitchen when it happened. I heard her choking, and when I ran in, Daniels, was standing over her. He told me to shut up, that it was too late." Lopez stepped in from the hallway, her tablet in hand. "We ran Daniels' phone records. He called a burner number 6 times the night of the murder. That number was used to activate a prepaid cell, the one you bought at the gas station." Ashley's face drained of color. "He made me buy it. Said it would keep him from getting traced. I didn't know what he was planning. He said it was just for a job. Credit cards, not—" She trailed off, swallowing hard. Briggs studied her. If she was lying, she was good. If she was telling the truth, Daniels had kept her close because she was both useful and scared. The captain called Briggs into the hall. "We've got a problem. The DA isn't touching this without direct evidence. She was involved in the killing. Right now, all we've got is fraud, theft, and a whole lot of bad company. If we want Daniel for murder, we need him in cuffs." Briggs returned to the room. Where would he go? Ashley hesitated, then glanced at the camera in the corner. "If I tell you, you have to promise I don't go to prison for this." Briggs didn't promise. He never did. But he kept his voice steady. "If it helps us get him, it will help you." She took a shaky breath. "There's a trailer out past the bayou. No address, just a dirt road. He keeps things there. Stuff he doesn't want found. That's where he'll go." By evening, Briggs, Lopez, and a small tactical team were bouncing down a rutted dirt track lined with cypress trees. Mosquitoes swarmed in the humid dusk. The trailer appeared like a shadow, its metal siding rusted, a single light glowing in the window. The team moved in silently. Briggs's heart pounded as they approached, every step sinking into the damp earth. Lopez peered through a crack in the curtain. "He's in there. Alone." Briggs gave the signal. The door burst open, and in a blur of shouting and movement, Daniels was on the floor, hands zip-tied behind his back. But as Briggs scanned the dim interior, his stomach turned. On the table sat a stack of Rebecca Harper's personal papers, her library ID card, and a small black phone, the prepaid cell from the gas station. Next to it was something worse, a folded piece of lined paper. On it, in blocky handwriting, "She talks, she dies." And beneath it, a single strand of long brown hair tied into a knot. Ashley's hair. Briggs realized this wasn't over. If anything, they had just stepped into the most dangerous part of the game. The evidence on the trailer table was enough to link Daniels to Rebecca's murder in the public's eyes. But Briggs knew the DA would still want airtight proof. A note with a threat wasn't the same as a signed confession. Daniels sat cuffed in the interrogation room, leaning back with a smirk that made Briggs's skin crawl. His beard was patchy, his eyes cold and unblinking. "You think you've got me?" Daniels said in a slow drawl. "All you got is a couple of papers and some hair. You can't prove I killed your sweet little librarian." Briggs kept his voice calm. "I've got enough to keep you here. And while you're here, Ashley's out there talking." Danielle's smirk faltered for the briefest second, just enough for Briggs to see he'd struck a nerve. Briggs left the room and joined Lopez in the observation booth. "He's not going to break," she said. "Not unless we make him think Ashley already has." Briggs nodded slowly. "Then we make her our bait." Ashley was brought back into the station from the safe house. She looked nervous, her eyes flicking to the closed blinds of the interrogation room. Briggs explained the plan. She'd confront Daniels, with cameras rolling, and push him into revealing what happened the night Rebecca died. At first, she refused. "If I go in there, he'll twist it back on me, make me sound like I was part of it." Briggs leaned in. "Ashley, right now the law already sees you as part of it. This is your chance to show you weren't." It took a long pause, but finally she nodded. When Ashley walked into the interrogation room, Danielle's eyes narrowed. "Well, if it isn't my little helper." Ashley sat down across from him, her hands trembling. "You promised we'd just take her cards, not hurt her," she said, her voice cracking. "Why did you—" Daniels cut her off with a sharp laugh. "You think you didn't know? You heard her coughing, choking. You didn't lift a finger." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "I froze. You told me to keep quiet or I'd be next." Daniels leaned forward, his voice dropping to a growl. "And you believe me because you saw what I can do." Briggs, watching from behind the glass, felt his pulse quicken. This was it. Ashley pressed on. "You strangled her, Mike. Just say it. You killed my sister." Danielle's jaw tightened. Then with a sneer, he muttered, "Yeah, I did. And I'd do it again if it meant shutting her up." The room fell silent. Daniels realized too late that every word had been recorded. When Briggs and Lopez re-entered, Daniels didn't bother resisting. The smugness was gone, replaced by the cold look of a man who knew he'd lost. By nightfall, the murder charge was official. Ashley was cleared of direct involvement in Rebecca's death, though she still faced charges for identity theft and fraud. But as Briggs packed up his case notes, something about her still gnawed at him. She hadn't been innocent. She'd opened the door for Daniels. She'd kept her mouth shut until it served her. And some part of him suspected she'd have stayed quiet forever if Daniels hadn't turned on her. The courtroom was packed on the morning of Danielle's trial. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras ready to catch every flicker of emotion. Family members of Rebecca Harper sat in the first row, clutching tissues and holding hands. Detective Briggs took a seat near the front, his case file thick with months of work. Ashley sat several rows back, her hair now its natural blonde, dressed plainly. She wasn't in handcuffs. Her fraud charges had been reduced in exchange for her testimony, but the eyes on her were just as sharp as those on Daniels. The prosecution didn't waste time. They played the interrogation footage for the jury, Daniels leaning forward, sneering, admitting to the murder. The courtroom went silent as his words echoed through the speakers. "Yeah, I did. And I'd do it again if it meant shutting her up." It was a moment that sealed his fate. The prosecutor walked the jury through the evidence. The stolen IDs, the jewelry, the belt from the storage unit, the threats against Ashley, and the witness statements from neighbors who'd heard arguments in the days before Rebecca's death. The defense tried to paint Ashley as the true mastermind, but Danielle's own admission and the history of his violence was too heavy to overcome. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury filed back in. The foreman stood. "We find the defendant, Michael Daniels, guilty of first-degree murder." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniels didn't flinch, but his eyes locked on Ashley as deputies cuffed him. His stare was cold, unreadable, a final silent threat. The judge sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole. When it was over, Ashley approached Briggs in the hallway. "So that's it? I just go back to my life?" she asked, her voice tight. Briggs studied her for a long moment. "You go back to whatever life you can make. But don't forget, your sister gave you a chance, and you threw it away." Ashley's eyes dropped, but she didn't respond. She just turned and walked out, disappearing into the crowd. Months later, Rebecca's house was sold. The neighbors said it felt strange not seeing her on the porch, waving at passers-by. A small memorial plaque was placed at the county library where she had worked, a quiet tribute to a woman whose kindness had been repaid with betrayal. For Briggs, the case stayed with him. Not because it had been hard to solve, but because it was a reminder of how trust, once given to the wrong person, could become the very thing that destroyed you. And every time he passed a library and saw the plaque, he thought of Rebecca Harper and how the only person who could have saved her had chosen not to.